Alright, let's get back to the present from the past, and unfortunately the blood has kidnapped Deji again, so let's move on.
Hero
I
has to
know.
be more careful.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. Deji, why isn't Deji learn the first time?
Also, as you can see, every time you exit the one of the portals, the world has to readjust a bit, hence why there's a lot of effect, like there's a bit of Vaseline or fog that it's dissipating as you move on.
It. I get it. So it's like if the doors of the Final Fantasy VII Remake were an entire world.
Okay, not exactly, because it's not a compact text or anything. Like I said, the whole idea of transitioning from one place to another is also reminiscent a bit of Silent Hill of all things. I don't understand why.
I mean, in this case, it's a co-loading thing. Also, Dracula, you can easily just fake
No.
through those bars.
Well, Tale of Silent Hill is Konami.
We don't have the Miss Power yet. Remember. Also, yes, cheeky Easter eggs like that. I get it. Remember, Jova, this Dracula, while still technically again immortal and shit and powerful enough to defeat, so enemies hasn't regained all of his strength. A bit, you remember, it's all about the urgency of the situation. Even if it looks like we're taking our time, Dracula is technically, going in fast motion. All of the game technically happens during the course of one single night.
Oh, but of course.
Leaves elevator music.
No, I can't do that.
That's not elevator music.
Maybe for Superman 4, considering each trap nuclear man
Pedro, theme into elevator music.
Also, Pedro, not an elevator theme, my arse. I've heard of plenty of elevator themes.
Oh, by the way, now we get this weird intermission while you're going, where Zobek is watching the newsfeed where he's telling that the outbreak has spread and the forces of the city are actually defending against it. But it's like it's kind of awkwardly placed in between you entering the building and you reaching Zobek. They could have easily just put it as a cutscene just before you reach Zobek. It's just weirdly placed.
Also, Tio, I do need a bit more warning than a few seconds so I can do the elevator music.
I don't know if it's funnier this way.
It takes time to create art.
Yeah, I know. I'm not even. I think. Remember, my piano lessons were years and years ago. I've forgotten most of it.
Dang.
The only tool is GarageBand.
A delayed elevator music is eventually good, I guess. Anyway, time for that interrogation that I mentioned. So let's see if Zobek has some inner Jack Bauer skills. Dracula is just gonna play kind of like good cop, believe it or not.
Yes. To tell you the truth, she hasn't shut up.
Do you find me attractive?
You don't wanna know.
I've tried reading her mind, but there is only chaos and fury there.
Because he's impotent.
Something is buried deep,
You both are.
but I'm unable to see it.
My dear.
Shut up! I'm talking here.
You could see what
You don't just diss Patrick Stewart like that.
She's too far gone.
I see you being the lead of a very controversial movie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It'd be like killing Samuel L. Jackson mid-speech. Oh wait, they did that.
God damn it.
make me pretty.
Well, honestly, Jova, that was one of the few legitimately shocking moments of Deep Blue Sea.
There you go. Dracula just has an actual clear thinking for the situation. If they developed, the virus, they probably developed an antidote or a vaccine just in case. So let's try to get our hands on
Must have
it.
been created when developing the virus to protect those chosen to serve them. Judging by the look of you, sadly it would seem you're not one of the chosen, my dear.
My dear, sadly, I am just one of Satan's whores.
Ow.
Oh.
Yeah, Jack Bauer interrogation skills, I guess.
Look around. See what I can
Very
find.
well, but make your own way there. It's risky to open a portal. It's likely the acolytes are aware of her disappearance by now.
So we don't want to steer too much attention. Yeah, sure.
Lady, your hair is clearly alive. You could just strangle him.
I guess she's just enjoying staying there.
Oh, so she's into that.
Well, as you can see, she didn't scream that much when Zobek plunged that fucking thing into her eye.
Yeah, there should have been a lot more screaming.
So I will say this, it is, one thing I do think is a missed opportunity is like, well, we don't really get as much downtime in the modern setting in the sense like, well, now due to the outbreak, the modern setting's all gonna be chaos.
And again,
like,
yeah,
we did
again,
get that one opening scene, but
sorry, no, go on. Sorry.
We did get that one opening scene, but again, the fact that we have Dracula in the modern setting could have been something to maybe take advantage of and look, but now it's more or less going to be chaos and, well, kind of have some medieval throwbacks.
It's to represent the urgency of the situation and have a convenient excuse to not have many NPCs roaming around the street other than the enemies that you just have to fight.
It
so
does,
there is that.
It does harken back to your theory that this game may have been rushed or they just had to pack everything into this game because as far as they knew this was going to be it. Which kind of does make me wonder, if this game ended up not having to be the end, what would they have done? A general rule of thumb
I genuinely believe American Steam just wanted to have one game set doing, like, say, the actual Belmont era, medieval times and everything, you know, and then the conclusion being entirely on the modern setting, just in a different way. Because trust me, we kinda are going somewhere with the whole transition to the past, you know, and the fact that Dracula doesn't have his abilities. There is some kind of payoff to this. So it's not just there for the sake of having having a progress system on its own. So there is that. But I get the idea we probably would have took a different direction in talking about the modern setting if we decided to do that, but it's just my guessing.
Well, in terms of the whole Belmont era thing, we technically had Mirror of Fate for that, I
True,
guess.
but I mean another one. Keep in mind that the original series of Castlevania milked that shit for literally centuries.
And hell, there's so many games dedicated to Simon Belmont himself that, yeah, I could see them doing that. Okay, so... But yeah, my point is like, okay, a general rule of thumb in the creative industry, but pretty much any bout of media, is unless you're certain that that's going to be your last title, never put all your amazing ideas into one basket. You know, otherwise, if you get a sequel, you may find yourself scrambling to figure out, oh my god, what the hell am I going to do?
Well, okay. What if it's something like It Takes Two, where you don't plan on making sequels to begin with, so you want to put everything you have in this one because you know you're not going to make any because you don't want to?
I'm talking mainly in the context of like a franchise or something.
Oh, okay, sure.
But okay, yeah, okay. Even with a case like It Takes Two, that is fine enough. I mean, because, well, okay, even if you get a game that does use some stuff similar to It Takes Two, if it's a different enough context, people might consider like a spiritual successor and like, well, I mean, as long as there's enough stuff to differentiate it, people wouldn't see it as like, you know, a knockoff or something. Now, if it becomes a consistent practice, there could be some issues there, but I feel like something like It Takes Two shouldn't have to worry about that sort of thing unless, for some reason, Joseph Fares does want to make a sequel to it.
I doubt it.
I feel like the story, at least so... I know we're only halfway through, at least so far, doesn't really seem like a one that would warrant a sequel at all.
No, it doesn't at all, Shiro. They wrap everything with a neat little bow at the end, and there's no need for one. Yeah.
There we go. But anyway, I kind of like this puzzle because despite the indicator that you were supposed to, you know, use the ice projectile, it was all about kind of intuition, where you still had to like look up and see if the sprinklers effect. So I kind of like that idea, and the fact that Dracula doesn't say anything like, I should probably, look for the ceiling or anything.
Keep in mind, Shiro, I was talking about in terms of gameplay, because remember Joe was talking about how the whole put all the ideas you have into the game, which is basically what the gameplay of It Takes Two does.
What a horrible night to have.
I think another thing to consider is also story.
Oh shit! Nick, I hope Nicolas Cage wasn't piloting that plane.
Oh god, he's had enough troubles with Conway Air.
Which film are you referring to?
Left
Conway
Behind.
Air.
No, Left Behind.
The bad Nicolas Cage film in which we don't get to see him be crazy.
Not just that. It's a movie that nobody cared about, and yet they wanted to make a sequel. We made like an Indiegogo campaign, and it was not even like mildly successful. It raised nothing. And the movie itself, like you say, is just boring. It's not even fun to make fun of, to be honest. Am I interrupting something? Just ignore me, please. Keep going.
They don't want you to get their food.
I don't care about their food. Jesus Christ.
They don't know that.
You need eyes to be granted to cleanse yourself from your beastly evils.
But yeah, I'd say what I said also extends to story bits. Like, I've heard some stories of writers who, again, have put a lot into their first book, but again, that's left no fresh ideas for the next book or whatnot. And, you know, stories in general.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, keep in mind, as you can see, story-wise also, this game is a radical shift from the first game. The first game was all about these, you know, quest, but it also had kind of like that twist at the end. But it was more like about these, mythological fantasy-like journey through these, uncharted territories. Well, this one instead is about like a stealth operation that has to be going on as fast as possible, while Dracula has to remain undercover and destroy, sabotage the acolytes while finding them. In a way, it does kind of reflect the typical Metal Gear plot. So I wonder if Mercury's team and Dave Cox wanted to have that kind of homage when making these, especially considering, like I mentioned, that the first Lords of Shadow has also a parallel to Metal Gear Solid 3 in its structure about, someone who believes he's fighting for a good cause, but at the end of the day, despite getting rewarded, he feels like absolute trash and has lost more than he has gained,
So I guess we could compare this one to Metal Gear Solid. Okay,
Ghost
a mix of
Babel,
Metal Gear.
I guess.
Yeah, I like a Ghost Babel is probably the best comparison you can make.
Ghost Babel is kind of similar in structure to either one of the first two games. I'm not talking just gameplay, also about story. Well, two specifically, MG2, because it also has the quirky, squad with the weird names. But it does get weird, like halfway through, in terms of plot. So.
Well, remember, Teo, Ghost Babel is kind of a what-if type of game where the Kojima allowed
to MG2.
Yeah, Kojima allowed the developers to just this is a what-if alternate sequel that's not actually canon, so go wild and do whatever you think would be cool, and that's basically
the guy who made it. I forgot what he's called. Is the one who actually did eventually Never that game that I talked about when we commented on the Konami conference.
Speaking of which, Pedro, in the context of the series, when do we want to tackle Ghost Babel?
Well, here's the thing. I would first like to get through, at the very least, a couple of the main series games before we start tackling... Well, Rising aside. Rising has to be prioritized, of course, but I would like to get get through the Solid Snake saga before we start handling the spin-offs, because
because Ghost Babel is still doable because in gameplay-wise it's very similar to the MSX games, so that's something that you're familiar with. The Acid Duology, on the other hand, it's a very different beast altogether.
Oh yeah, I was actually gonna ask. So, I know when it comes to the Legend of Zelda series, we plan to handle that chronologically, God help us, but how so with the Metal Gear series?
Well, the Metal Gear series, I intend to do them like we've been doing up until this point, which is by order of release, because I feel because a lot of the things that work a lot better if you play them through that way. There's MGS3 references in Metal Gear Solid 4. So even though MGS3 takes place before, it actually helps to play MGS3 before you play 4. Go on.
Because then you get the context of how you create a paradox.
Well, remember, Joe, but 4 is like I said various times. 4 is the Avengers. Oh, hold on, cutscene.
No, it's just a transitioning.
Okay. Well, 4 is the Avengers Endgame of the series, meaning it's made exclusively for hardcore fans who have seen, or in this case, play them all and all that shit.
That was also a good segue to mention that, again, the transformation into a rat, it's not always just to avoid guards, but also to pass through tiny places in order to reach inside buildings, in places where you cannot normally reach. So that's pretty nice.
But yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you want to go?
No, just a question that I wanted to ask Pedro, just because I forgot. Let me read this memorial first.
Sure, go on.
to Andras the Weigel. Tribute memorial to Andras the Weigel, soldier brother of the light. The descendants of Weigels, deeply rooted in the city, wish to express and share with their neighbors and visitors their eternal admiration and gratitude to the great Andras. This corner of the city will always be a place of meditation and seclusion, a place to celebrate with the Prince of Darkness was defeated forever by all of those who fought and died so we might live our day. Remember, after that night, the brotherhood and everyone in general thought that Dracula was dead for good. So again, that's one piece of a puzzle mystery. Like, we clearly see that now what exactly happened. Especially because, remember, we kind of cut away from a moment in the flashback, which will probably reprise later. But the question I wanted to ask Pedro, because I forgot.
Go on.
Which was released, not in terms of chronology, which was released first? Peace Walker or Portable Ops?
Portable Ops.
So that kind of, yeah, it's in Peace Walker there's that joke that we wrap.
Let me put it this way: Portable Ops released sometime after, in between 3 and 4 too, because because remember Kojima was busy with 4, so obviously a different team had to make Portable Ops. But Peace Walker was actually but Peace Walker was the proper follow-up to MGS3 that Kojima actually wanted to make.
As far as I know, Portable Ops is still...
Ops are canon.
No, Peace Walker definitely. Portable Ops, I think it is, but it's more like hand-waved with its...
Kojima in his usual convoluted way specifically said that the general story is canon, but not specific plot points. But because again,
it sounds like he hates Portable Ops.
No. Kojima doesn't hate Portable Ops, or at least if he does, he does a good job hiding it. He did say it's just that, like, because
Alright, let's activate the Dragon Amulet. Let's see what an insta-kill actually looks like in this game.
Sure, go on.
Gabriel, what the fuck? And hey, I don't get to censor it because it doesn't involve nudity. Hooray!
Yeah, even if it did involve nudity, YouTube might be lenient on it, so long as it's not monetized.
That will just save that discussion from a later part. Trust me, Joe, it will be relevant then.
Anyway,
go on. Sorry.
Portable Ops. Like I said, Portable Ops is a really good game. It's just that the story is technically skippable. It's a fine story. Don't get me wrong. It's just that in terms of the grander scheme of the Metal Gear chronology, it's not really essential. It's a game that you can definitely skip.
I forgot.
It has that. Oh, you see, you get to see Roy Campbell when he was young. That's nice, but it doesn't. But they don't really do much with him. Not really.
Also, I forgot which game was the one that had the Metal Gear model, or the equivalent of it, that was those ugly colors like purple and the lime green. I forgot which game. One of those games had that one as the final boss. Okay, maybe it was one of the acid games.
I think you're probably talking about the acid games because I don't think
just watch So Call Me Johnny's reviewables because those are kind of a blast in terms of plot.
Yeah.
Gameplay they are something that you need to dedicate your time to. So it's not a case of they're bad because they're different, but again you have to dedicate your time to because they are just that different. You need to give commitment to them.
So is it like a case of Wonderful 101 where...
I suppose. Yeah. Hold on. From the city to the unknown soldier, there are no words of any language on the world, nor time enough in eternity to express the gratitude of the inhabitants of this city, and also to all mankind, to the thousands of anonymous soldiers who fought and died in the vile and dark times of Dracula. From the falling in the Battle of Nifel to the glorious victors of the final siege of the castle, all deserve a place in history and a sincere prayer. That's
so
nice.
You can start to get a semblance of what's up with the city, but...
Oh yeah, I forgot also to mention... Well, Zobek did mention that it's built specifically on the remnants of the castle. We're still taking the same location, of Carmilla's castle from the first game, technically. Though, keep in mind, I don't remember if it's actually mentioning one of the memorials, but I do remember. You want to know what the actual city is called?
Oh boy...
Taking a page from the Tekken movies, they decide to call it Castlevania City.
Yeah,
this is so stupid.
A lot of people.
Movie you referring to?
The live action Tekken movie actually takes the setting takes place in a place called Tekken City. Or Tekken Island, I forgot.
That sounds like something you come up with when you can't think of a good name.
That's like something that you will come up with writing something with.
Well, I mean, considering that film was apparently
There you
written by one of the same guys that wrote Ballistic, I'm not surprised.
Also, I know what you're thinking. Oh, it's a level in an asylum. Are things gonna get spoopy? Not really. It's just a building where Metro is passing through.
Please don't tell me this is gonna be like in Sucker Punch.
No, not really.
Thank God.
Why would it be?
The hospital asylum setting is okay. I don't want to say wasted because there are some decent puzzle elements, but it could have easily been any other type of building, like say a hotel or anything, because you just skim through each room and see the effect of the patients. But you don't get a psychological moment or something like when you think you're going crazy, like say something from Batman Arkham Asylum. You're just passing by.
This is what I would argue is
in creepy hospitals.
This is what I would argue is a bit of an issue with the modern settings here. It's not just that they're dull, it's just that it feels like they don't take advantage of their settings as much as, say, the castle sections do. Like, now with the castle sections, those absolutely do take advantage of their different set pieces and worlds and whatnot. With the modern buildings, it's just... you're mainly passing through, look at how stuff is wrecked here. Which is where I go into why it's such a missed opportunity that we didn't get to see more of the world, before, the modern world, before it starts getting overrun with creatures of the dark. Now, granted, I do know that obviously we need a battle mechanic, so it would need to occur going on, but man, imagine something like Batman Arkham City. And yes, typically you are meant to be on your toes in Arkham City, but even in Arkham City, there are some bouts where you can have some more quiet moments and whatnot still.
But in general, okay, I don't think I ever mentioned in a commentary, but my favorite piece in general from Arkham City is the entirety of the sequence at the museum, which happens like 1/3 kinda into the game. It's not to say that the rest of the game is bad, but I just really like what happens in there because in its entirety of its constructed, it literally has everything. You get the Predator missions where Batman gets to be Batman, of course. You get the quiet moment actually that you mentioned. The entire premise is all about fighting the trying to arrive the Penguin and finding out in the meantime that Mr. Freeze is also captured and doing something for him. Batman gets punched a shark in the face. I mean, yeah. And it all culminates in you trying to use a gadget against the Penguin, and then all of a sudden Solomon Grundy boss fight because why not? Again, in general, it's structured because it has everything, the thing that you mentioned, Jova. Though, again, I don't really mind the fact that they don't take too much advantage of the buildings in this game, aside from very specific locations, which you will also see later.
I feel like...
But I do agree that there could have been something added onto it. I don't know.
Let me put it like this. Imagine we get segments where we see how stuff is modern in Castlevania City and, compare it to how it was in the past, which, again, this is actually tying to why we're going into bouts of the castle in its past, because technically this entire city is the castle, just... more modern now.
Remember, after the battle, in the past, the one at the beginning of the game, the castle was kind of pulverized, so the city was built on top of a foundation. The only thing that survived are like the basement kind of levels. But right now we're still kind of on a surface level.
Well, you get the point, though. It's like, again, though, whose dumb idea was it to call it Castlevania City? It's like, oh yeah, that's a perfect way to celebrate how we defeated the Dark Lord Dracula. Let's name the city after his castle.
The mayor of this city is probably the same mayor from Pumpkinhead 2.
Ow.
To give you an idea, Jova, there's a horror movie series called Pumpkinhead, where the monster of that franchise is, Pumpkinhead, as the title. And the mayor of the second game, which is regarded as the worst game, is, I'm not kidding you, Joe, but the reason he doesn't want to kill Pumpkinhead is because he thinks having a monster killing people is good for tourism.
Oh God!
So it's kind of
probably this is the same mayor, probably. But to answer Jova's question, that's the thing, Jova. One problem that I do have with Sucker Punch that I don't hear most people often is that they do that thing where instead of actually taking place mostly in the real setting of the asylum, which I will argue is a far more interesting setting, they instead have the imaginary brothel setting, which is far less interesting, if you ask me. So.
I thought a lot of people complained about that.
I forgot if I mentioned in the commentary, but again, I get the idea that what the movie was trying to do is went to the locations, both for the brothel and the CD imagination sequence, are supposed to be a parallel.
Oh, I get that. I get what that is too. The movie makes that clear by the end. It's just that I don't.
Again. I won't lie. The first time I watched that movie with Pedro and Dwibs, I was so confused that I thought that secretly the asylum actually was a brothel in reality, and that the fact that it was all in her head was supposed to be the twist. But no, apparently the movie expects that to be obvious from the get-go, and I'm like...
It's mostly the fact that Zack Snyder just needs to just not write. He's just not good at it.
Well, again, Army of the Dead seems to have been a decent movie enough.
Well, yeah, but he didn't write that though. Too.
I think he did.
He wrote the story. He co-wrote the story, but somebody else wrote the script. And even then, that movie is way simpler in story compared. Because remember, Sucker Punch was him trying to do a thought-provoking movie, and yeah, if there's one thing Zack does not know how to do is do that. So
if I'm to give him some credit, I don't feel like he's a completely terrible writer. Like, he has written some good things. Remember, he also did help with some of the story for Wonder Woman as well. Like, that said, don't get me wrong, Sucker Punch is a terrible movie, and if I were to judge his writing off of that movie, yeah, I'd have a little opinion.
Well, yeah, but remember, Joe, but the thing is, yes, he did help with the story of Wonder Woman, and he also was one of the story writers of Army of Dead. But that's it. He had collaborators and writers helping him. In Sucker Punch, he was the only writer. It was just him.
Also, I'm checking here. The co-writers, Shay Hatton and Joby Hare, were only for the screenplay. The actual story is just by Zack himself.
Ah, okay. Well, my point still stands, though. Like, he had actual other writers to help him put this thing together.
That is true, but only on the conceptual level. When it comes to the finished product, that was literally just his own call.
Well, obviously.
So there wasn't technically anyone who could stop him from fucking up, in the actual, stages of production.
Well, here's the thing too. I don't know if you've seen Army of Dead. Army of Dead is literally just hunt the zombies down type of movie. It's a very hard movie to get wrong, really.
That's what I mean to your first statement, to the first statement that you mentioned, in this regard. I don't think Zack should stop writing for literally anything. It's just a matter of finding something that he can enjoy, but also can make also the audience
Sure,
enjoy.
I guess.
Okay, I think if Sucker Punch tells us anything, he's probably not the best to write, big term issues like, the stuff that Sucker Punch tries to cover.
On the other hand, though, I do believe we should write more about fantasy stuff, because the potential that is in both Sucker Punch and in the House of Ga'Hoole, and how utterly wasted it is. I think there is something that can be done with that.
Oh yeah, speaking of Warner Brothers.
The Christopher Nolan news.
Yeah, basically, I'm guessing after the whole public spat between him and Warner Brothers regarding Tenet's release, in which I'll be honest, I don't think either side came out of looking very good.
What did he mess up then?
Well, he insisted on the movie being releasing in theaters because he really wanted people to enjoy because it was a movie meant for theaters.
Keep in mind, Jova, it was last year when the pandemic was much more in full force and countries were much more restrictive when it comes to allowing people to go to the cinema.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Here's my stance on it. On one hand, Warner Brothers really should have handled the spat better rather than just airing their dirty laundry in public. But on the other hand, Nolan, what the hell were you expecting? It was September 2020. We were still in the midst of the worst part of the pandemic, you moron. What did you think was going to happen?
The only good potential solution would have been delaying further the movie and ban an actual theater release. They actually did that for The Croods 2 in my country, actually. If you remember any video from the last couple of months, audience, I did complain that I hadn't seen a single trailer for The Croods 2, when even didn't appear when it came out back in December 2020. That's because in my country it actually was released around in like July, August, and around that point they started bombarding with the trailers. So it was either just the marketing campaign that was shit.
To go on to finish off what I was going at, basically Nolan's next movie is now going to be at Universal.
That's cool.
Yeah, with Comcast. Have fun with that, Nolan.
Yes, Pedro.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, unless it's like a really big thing, Comcast aren't going to say no. Comcast aren't going to say no to a guy like Nolan, are they?
No, as long as they let him do his thing, I don't know. I don't really care who releases the movie.
It's all a matter to see if they actually put an actual leash on him and in what kind.
Well, that's the thing too. If they try to do that, he'll probably just cut off relations with them as well. So
probably.
Anyway,
we'll see.
No, that's
Yes, Pedro?
well, actually, there's a text here.
Memorial for the Mental Health Workers Guild to the Heroes of the City, June 1910. We celebrate the resurrection of this magnificent hospital, which provides such an excellent and necessary service to the residents of our city. Despite the centuries that have gone by, the dark times of Dracula left a deep mark on the collective subconscious of the people. Such is the case of that even today, centuries after the defeat of evil one and Elderhood. We still treat thousands of cases related to the irrational and uncontrollable fear of vampires and other creatures of the night. Thanks to all those who fought in the defeat of Dracula, those tears will never again become reality.
You know, okay. Stuff like this really does fuel my issue with why we didn't get to see more of what this world is like. Like, do people still believe in creatures of the dark, or had it gotten to a point where these are just manuscripts deep in, and most people don't believe in this stuff anymore? Like, you know, typical.
Well, I can answer you later, but first, go on, Pedro.
No. I just wanted to explain to Jova that even though it's been a while since we've done Metal Gear 1 and 2, fortunately, it's a good thing that Metal Gear Solid 1 has text recaps of both games, so we'll be able to refresh our memories before we start.
Though, when it usually came out, people in the West had not many ways to play MG1 and 2. So they actually thought it was convenient to actually put an actual, text recap, especially because MGS1 does reference them. You think that it would not, being a fresh start, but no, they did it from the beginning. They talk about the corpse of Big Boss.
Well, remember too, like, obviously the idea is that it takes place after, and a lot of the stuff that happens in MGS1 are dependent on what happens in Metal Gear 2, so they would have to. Go on.
His memorial was created for
the go on.
For construction in City Mental Hospital in 1902. Due to foundation works for the building, a mass grave was discovered with thousands of scattered remains of newborns. Until then, no one believes certain legends around the concubines of Dracula, who transformed into snakes, entered the houses of the towns around the castle and took away the babies. Now we know those horrible legends were true. That this memorial be a tribute to all those who lived, suffered, and died during those times of atrocity and despair. To answer your question, Jova, the occult is something that people in this world believe it happened, but after the defeat of Dracula, it kind of stopped. So they believe, it's, we don't have to care about it anymore. People who are believing it's still alive today are just, being paranoid and potentially, mad people,
I wonder how they explain all these manuscripts around that well are pointing towards the fact that Dracula was very much a thing.
No, that's the thing. That's what they said, Jova. The people actually are okay. They actually know about the existence of Dracula, but they also believe, in a kind of like similar, Harry Potter books, book-wise 4 and 5, that he was ultimately defeated and did not have ways to come back. So they thought, with Dracula defeated, the forces of darkness disappear, and we're not having, murder or traffic accidents,
Oh, I get that. I was just wondering if, like, in this modern setting, if, the typical citizen still believes in creatures of the dark and whatnot. Like, again, granted, obviously now they'll have no choice but to believe.
Okay, no, Joe, like also the memorials mentioned, the general consensus is no, they believe we live in a time of peace, and those who actually believe otherwise, they're actually convicted as mental health patients. So there is some kind of, underground-like society control kind of thing going on. Especially because, remember, Zobek actually owns part of the city.
Which is, again, ironic. Like, again, it's a city named after Dracula's castle, and yet even that fell to the bottom. This stuff
we're about to get a new enemy type, something that we saw foreshadowed in the newsfeed that Zobek was actually watching. the actual city police force.
Mm-hmm.
About time. Ready for
Ah.
your orders, lads.
Lads.
I can't see any possessed around here, Captain.
Yep, Dracula is not technically counts as one.
He's not wearing a gas mask. I can see that. Come with us, sir. Hey,
No.
Gabriel, just be polite. Why do you have to be a dick with these poor people?
I guess he thinks it makes it look cooler.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay, peace is not an option anymore.
The future is now, old man. Gone are the day of swords and shields. We got flipping machine guns now.
That's the thing, the projectiles
Trevor,
actually don't do much, thankfully.
Those swords and shields that we got with sequels. Is that the name of the next Pokemon game?
No.
Pokemon Gun.
Pokemon Gun, that's the only thing that people
Gun
joke.
and Pokemon Gun and Pokemon, I know, Blade.
Knife.
Also, here's how...
Well, by that logic, shouldn't it be fork and knife then?
No. Pokemon Gun, Pokemon Dagger.
Also, here's how the strategy for this enemy is. They normally have a round shield that they employ with those minimax that they have. So you're basically very suggested to use the Chaos Claws. But if you do, you will not be able to break the shield immediately, and they will try to fly away and shoot you from there. So it's your cue to actually launch a fireball at that point. So again, these are step up in terms of enemy type, and I actually kind of like these. It is a bit of variety also for the future setting.
I do like the step up in quality, but I will admit it does have a bit of Arkham City syndrome. What do I mean by Arkham City syndrome? Well, imagine an awesome game, but an awesome game that has very stupid story reasons for stuff to occur and whatnot. In that sense, like,
hold on. The state of chaos into which the city has been immersed has led to heavily armed security forces to rebel in search of survival and personal gain. Using the advanced combat knowledge acquired by the Academy and total lack of ethics, they ransack and massacre any civilians that crosses their path, whatever or not being infected. Their servo armor protects them against the demonic plague through the air infiltration system and gives them superhuman abilities, such as 2 extra arms equipped with knives and protective shields. They also have a jump pack on their backs that enables them to fight away any threat from the air. So basically, while in this case they were
perfectly okay to kill them because they have a lack of ethics.
Again, I was about to mention, well, these guys seem to at least respect a bit of the protocol. Anyone that you encounter afterwards, no, they're just dicks who have just rebelled and started acting rogue on their own.
Part of me does wonder if somebody realized, in hindsight, that cutscene's not a good look for Drax, so let's make it that they probably would have been heartless anyway, so it's okay to kill them.
Indeed.
I mean, you shouldn't really need it. It's still fucking Dracula after all, but whatever.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, one thing about the Lords of Shadow one is that, to an extent, they kind of do still want you to sympathize with Dracula. So obviously they need to give him...
Oh, Lord, I need also to point out this moment. Let's see how Dracula finish off this last remaining enemy. Teleports behind you. There we go. Hold on. Oh, come on! You wasted a perfectly good heart, Gabriel.
Could have gotten some blood from that, damn it.
Anyway, till next time, where we actually trying to find the fabled vaccine that we've been talking about. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.